Wrestling fans, are you ready? For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, let's get ready to rumble!
And now, please welcome at this time your hosts, Graham GSM Matthews and RJ Marceau. You're listening to the next era of wrestling radio. This is WrestleRant Radio.
Back on WrestleRant Radio for Thursday, August 15th, 2024. Kind of a quiet week in the world of wrestling, with still some stuff to talk about nonetheless. Mr. Marceau, brother, how you doing?
Doing good, how are you?
Doing good. I know we were just talking about it a minute ago, but I feel like there was more news on the Disney front this week as far as upcoming movies in the Disney park and stuff like that than there was in wrestling. But I mean, like I said, we were just discussing this off air. But I'm actually extremely excited to go back to Disney at some point for all the new shit they're doing, but it won't be for another couple of years, I think.
Yeah, no, I think me and Molly, we were just down there in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she loves Disney, so we'll probably get down there soon. Or like, I don't know, we have nieces and nephews that are younger, so maybe in a few years when they want to bring the kids, we'll go again. But no, we love Disney, and some exciting news. Some stuff that's like, come on, it's like, but let's put some new stars over. But I mean. Yeah, sometimes you just got to go to the cash cow, right?
Seriously, when you got nieces and nephews and younger family members, it gives you an excuse to go back sooner. But I mean, it's fucking Disney. I don't care. But like, the lines are long, and you won't complain about it when you're there and when you're out of there. But when you're there, it's still Disney, and you enjoy it. But you are right that we talked about Toy Story 5. I forgot to mention two things. One, did you see they're making a villains park? That's fucking awesome.
Making a what park?
A villains theme.
A villains?
Yeah.
I did see that. Yeah, I did see that.
That is crazy. I think that's going to be really cool. And the other thing, did you see they're making a third Incredibles movie?
I did. I honestly don't really recall the second movie. But, I mean, I'm not a huge Incredibles. It's probably one of my least favorite out of all of them.
Wow. Okay.
I mean,
interesting.
That might be a hot take, but I don't know. I literally the other night when it came out or it was discussed, I was talking to Molly about it. I was like, I'm like, the first one or the second one's the one with the kid with the red hair? And she's like, that's the first one. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you what the second one is then.
Wow. I'm sure you saw it. You probably just don't remember. But that's funny now. That's one of my...
It came out like a while after the original, right?
Oh, yeah. It came out like 14 years later.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I just have to rewatch it, but I don't know. I'm not a huge Incredibles guy. Interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my more favorite movies. But I know you already bought your ticket for Moana 2 day one.
Oh, I can't wait.
You're going to have a big 2024 because Moana 2 comes out in November, which seems extremely soon because this movie I didn't even know was happening earlier this year. But they're coming out, I think, with Moana 2 November, and then Mufasa comes out in December. So they have a big winter lined up for 2024.
Can't wait.
And then the trailer looked pretty promising too, so I'm looking forward to it. But out of the WWE stuff, we had not a whole lot of wrestling news to talk about, but I do want to discuss some things from Raw and a few other contract-related things. And we might as well just have a contract section of the show every single week, because I feel like in 2024 specifically, there's contract news with both companies every single week. Who's going where, free agents, is this person leaving, is this person coming in? More stuff on that front in a moment. New episodes, though, of WrestleRant Radio every single Thursday on WrestleRant.com, WrestleRantRadio.com, iTunes, Spotify, all the usual podcast platforms. Rate the show, review the show, subscribe to the show. Never miss a new episode every single Thursday. But one of the things that came out this week, Mr. Marceau, was the news, and to a shock of absolutely no one, Randy Orton re-signing with WWE for another 5 years. I think his last deal was up in 2019. That was when, I think it was late 2019. It was right around the time that Dynamite started, and he was never actually going anywhere. But he was teasing, like he would play fucking Twitch or Game or whatever it was, and he would talk about like, oh yeah,
Twitch.
was it Twitch? Yeah. I don't know if it was...
Yep.
Was Twitch a thing back then? I guess so.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, he was. Do you remember what he was playing? It was like Call of Duty. Like he was really big on one of those games.
Yep.
Yeah. But he was playing one of those games, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to work with Sammy Guevara and all this other shit." It's like he's not actually fucking going there. He obviously just did that for leverage, and he didn't even have to do that this time. He signed a big fat contract for another 5 years. He ain't going anywhere. So again, this was a no-brainer. I forgot that his deal was even up this year. But your thoughts on the news that Randy Orton is sticking with WWE for the long haul?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great signing. I mean, 5 years might. That kind of seems like a long time. I mean, he's in his early to mid-40s now, but no, he's been doing great work since he's come back, and I mean, I think he's got a good heel run in him again. So, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer for him, no-brainer for WWE, and it's a good overall signing.
I know you said it might sound a little long, but I know Taker, even the year that he retired, had signed like I believe, a 15-year contract with WWE, clearly as an alumni or whatever. With Orton, he doesn't necessarily have to wrestle that entire time. I mean, it might be a 5-year talent deal, but he could retire at any point in the next 5 years and then transition into like another on-air role on the show or like a behind-the-scenes guy, which is probably more likely. That being said, though, based on what we've seen from Orton since he's been back, since Survivor Series of last year, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Orton will be wrestling for another 5 years. I think he's mid-40s right now. I got to look it up, but I feel like another 5 years isn't too unrealistic for Randy Orton.
No, I mean, especially with like his body transformation just being a little bit bigger, I bet you won't be as much wear and tear on his body as before. So, I mean, it's not like he's wrestling every night anyways, so, I mean, I think he could probably do it.
Yeah, I think he could pull it off. So he is 44 years old right now. He turned 44 on April 1st. So he's not actually going anywhere, until he's at least 49, and even then he's probably not going anywhere. But, you mentioned the heel run and how he has that in him. He's going to be facing Gunther at Bash in Berlin later on this month for the World Heavyweight Championship. I mean, the guy, we joke about people like Big Show having a million babyface heel turns and whatnot. I mean, Orton has also turned a fair amount in the last 20 years, 20 plus years in WWE. But I think people are a lot less sick of it because he gets hurt quite a bit, so he's not around all that often. But he can play both roles really, really well. I just feel like the longevity for Orton, I mean, even Jericho had a lot of babyface and heel turns, but his creative for the last couple of years in AEW has been absolute trash. If they can keep Orton's creative engaging and fun, then I think he could have at least another great 5 years left in him as far as like being a compelling character on the show. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I think, like you said, I think with him specifically, he's also just extremely over with the audience both ways, too. It's not like, I feel like even as a heel, people like him just because he's like you said, like the Viper, just the way his character's been. But Big Show, I just feel like every other week he was turning babyface and heel, and people really didn't care about him to begin with. So then it got to the point where you're like, this is just like, what are we doing here? So, I mean...
There's a lot more you can do with Orton, as you said. I mean, with Big Show, the guy was just a stepping stone in the main event scene, and he won a lot of championships. He was very successful, but Big Show felt like the same character after 20 years, babyface heel or whatever. Orton has gone through so many transformations, especially in recent years with the RK Bro stuff. Like, Orton was never the greatest babyface. Aside from that one stretch post-Legacy where he was like, literally like the Stone Cold Steve Austin of WWE in 2010. He was never really the most interesting babyface. And he was also 12 years younger at that point. He was fucking 32 back then, and he wasn't a great babyface. But at 44, people just have this eternal love for Randy Orton that just carries him as a fan favorite. But when the time comes for him to turn heel, which, as we've said before, may not be in the too distant future, it's going to be great, and it's going to hit like crack. So I'm looking forward to that. Another contract-related thing this time from AEW, the only other one I got on the docket for this week. Daniel Garcia, now this was in the news about a week or so ago. Didn't bring it up last week, I forgot. But his name came up again this week from Fightful, where they had reported that he has actually yet to sign a new deal with AEW. His deal is up soon, as are a number of other AEW contracts. And some of these people did not sign in 2019, but a lot of the AEW Originals deals are up this year because they signed 5-year deals at the time. That including the Lucha Bros, which is why their deal is up imminently. I know Penta had dismissed the rumors of him meeting with WWE officials this week, which is probably true. He probably didn't do that. I don't know why he'd be meeting with WWE officials in Florida if there's still technically an AEW under an AEW contract. I don't know how that makes sense. But if they're WWE bound, I wouldn't be shocked. We talked about them last week. Ricky Starks, we had mentioned before, his deal might be up imminently. He has not been on the show in many months. He's probably on his way out. But Daniel Garcia is an interesting one because he had just headlined Dynamite like a month or so ago in that International Championship match with Will Ospreay. And they had a great match, MJF turning on Garcia afterward. Pretty vicious beatdown. What we did not know, because I thought for a moment there that they might be setting up for a match at All In. Thankfully, that's not the case, and they're doing MJF and Will Ospreay on that show. They could do MJF and Garcia at All Out, which is 2 weeks after All In. Very possible. But if he doesn't re-sign, that could just be their way of writing him off the show. So, interested to hear your take, because I know you've never been the biggest Daniel Garcia guy, although I will make the argument he has gotten more over, and he's proven himself a lot more than where he was on the card as part of Jericho Appreciation Society and that dumb shit. But compared to then, I feel like he's kind of built his credibility quite a bit. So just want to get your 2 cents on Garcia's status as far as where you think he would be a better fit, staying in AEW or making kind of betting on himself and going to WWE.
Yeah, I mean, I think since he's got all the Jericho stuff, I think he's obviously been a little bit better. He could probably quit the humping, but I mean, I get people love that stuff, but I think you could probably get away with that, but I think people would still like him. But I mean, if you're him, I feel like the best thing is to just weigh WWE against like you got to leverage. I mean, I feel like AEW sees a lot in him. Like you said, he was just in the main event. I feel like they've been kind of propping him up or pushing him up the card. But at the end of the day, you also kind of have to weigh, like, if WWE has serious interest too, you just leverage one against the other, then you just get yourself the best deal. I mean, I think in his situation, he's still very young, and like I said, he could go either way. But, I mean, if you're smart business-wise, you just kind of, if the interest is there from WWE, you just ping him back and forth and see the best deal you can get.
I think that's probably the best course of action, and I'm surprised more people don't do that. Like, we haven't seen many people, honestly, allow their contract to expire and then go back to said company. Like, when Ricochet's contract was up, the rumor was that, he was going to allow his contract to expire, and then he would see what offer he got from AEW. I mean, he could always go back. I mean, it's very possible. At this point, I kind of hope he doesn't. But it wasn't as if the idea was he would allow his contract to expire, see where he could get, the best offer, and then he would go back to WWE. He's probably on his way to AEW. Same thing with Bobby Lashley. They're TNA or AEW or whatever. Bobby Lashley probably is not coming back. Daniel Garcia, though, I don't know. You make a good point as far as you should allow yourself to hit free agency to make your value go up. I think WWE would want him just because he's been somewhat prominently featured in AEW. I think Shawn Michaels could do something with him. But what do you think the long-term development is, or rather the long-term outlook for a guy like Daniel Garcia in WWE? Very good worker. Character-wise, he's kind of put it together in recent years a little bit better. I think he has shown more potential recently than he did even 2 years ago when he was just a fucking boring wrestler on the show, in my opinion. He got over in the Bryan Danielson stuff, but then they failed to capitalize, and nothing new there. But, like, if he were to go to WWE, or NXT specifically, which is where he would probably be best suited, what do you think the long-term outlook is for a guy like him?
I mean, like you said, I think he's young enough that I think, depending on working on the character and all that stuff, like I said, I think the move-wise, like, he has that down. I think it's just more the character and mic work and all that stuff, so I think going to NXT first obviously would be ideal, and then just kind of like maybe put on a little bit more size. I think for WWE specifically, I think they'd like that a little bit more. But I mean, I think in-ring wise, he has it pretty down. I think just the other stuff that kind of like make you a superstar that he's kind of lacking currently.
Yeah, I just feel like you would have a better shot with everything that you just said in AEW. I mean, they've already proven recently anyway that, I mean, he wasn't competing for world titles every single week, but it seems like he has a ready-made program to come back with MJF. Kind of got over with the audience before he took off, before the hiatus happened. I just feel like that's probably the best place for him. And I think the key thing of what you said earlier was that he's young enough. I think he's either 24 or 27, something like that. So if he signs a 2, 3, 4, 5-year deal, he can still get a potential deal or a run with WWE in 3 to 5 years. I'm assuming that they're still interested by then, but I'm not sure why they wouldn't be unless he completely falls off by then. But I think sticking with AEW is probably his best bet. But it would be interesting to see like Garcia, Starks, and Lucha Bros all go to a WWE at the same time. I don't know if there's enough spots for them in WWE as far as utilizing all 4 guys at a good level simultaneously. But that is something I worry about, though, with all these people whose contracts are rumored to be up. I mean, I guess you could say the same thing about people leaving WWE for AEW. I just worry that you may not have enough spots for all of these people in WWE if they were to come over.
No, I agree. I mean, you can't just sign everyone. I think you just gotta see who's out there, and then, like you said, just make a plan and be like, yes, this person's a free agent. Are we going to actually utilize them? Or like I don't know. I feel like, especially with a lot of free agents coming out or like people's contracts expiring, you kind of really have to weigh like, would you rather have this person or that person? You can't just take everyone, because like I said, then you get like the old bloated WWE roster, and then you have plenty of people that are not using now. Then you bring in more people that you're not using, and just you have to be smart with it and just like plan it out before you start signing all these people.
Yeah, no, you can't just sign people just because they had notoriety or they were, defecting from AEW. Like Ethan Page, that might have been the case with, but they've quickly proven, at least in NXT and the main roster, we don't know yet. But in NXT, they had a plan for him. I mean, they brought him in, and he's the NXT champion. Shawn Spears hasn't really done all that much, but he was never really going to be the guy in NXT anyway. He's been there, twice already. So, but I think people like Ethan Page and Jade Cargill should give AEW fans hope that there is life in WWE for AEW stars. So, for people that have never been in WWE, like Cody Rhodes and Punk have obviously been successful, but they were already in WWE, so that was a given. But like everyone else was kind of, you don't really know what you're going to get, but Ethan Page and Jade have had enough success in WWE where I think someone like a Ricky Starks, I think, belongs there. Daniel Garcia, I'm a little less optimistic about right now in WWE, but like Lucha Bros, Motor City Machine Guns, hopefully I think can do well in WWE with the right push and the right booking and whatnot, regardless of what brand they end up on. But SmackDown from last Friday, before we get to Raw for Monday, do want to mention this one thing. Obviously, Roman Reigns was back. We talked about Roman Reigns' return at length here on the show last week. But one thing from SmackDown last week that's worth noting, we do have the Undisputed WWE Championship match already announced for the show coming up later this month. It's going to be Cody Rhodes defending against Kevin Owens. Now, we were wondering who was next for Cody, where they go next with them. I'm glad they're not doing Cody and Solo again, or Cody Solo Roman. That would have been dumb. They're going in a completely different direction by allowing Cody to choose his challenger, and he picked his own friend Kevin Owens for all the times that he's helped him against the Bloodline. He felt he was worthy despite his subpar win-loss record in 2024, and I thought the setup was great. He declined the challenge. Nick Aldis kind of convinced him to say yes and kind of manipulating him in a way, but I thought it worked. Everything about the build-up on Friday, although it was brief, I thought was well done, and I'm looking forward to the match. There's no chance Owens wins the championship, obviously, but I think the match is a nice, fresh championship match, and it might lead to more intriguing stuff down the road. So, your thoughts on Kevin Owens being the next challenger for Cody Rhodes at Bash in Berlin?
No, we discussed it last week. I feel like he was the only person that made sense, and with all the characters or people in play. I mean, we're working to Solo so early, working to Roman so early. Hey, Owens has helped me out, and Orton's going to be on facing Gunther, so it made sense just offer it to Owens since he's helped him so many times. So I think it made sense. Like I said, I think it was done well, and there's no chance Owens wins, but I think it'd still be a fun match.
I would have said 4 or 5 months ago, you can use this as an opportunity coming out of WrestleMania 40 to turn Owens heel, because I mean, there is that subtle story there that Owens didn't really, not that he didn't trust Cody, but Cody was the reason why Owens got sent to SmackDown and got separated from Sami Zayn last fall. I mean, that was Cody's fault. Cody got Jay traded to Raw to give him a fresh start, and in exchange, SmackDown got a star from Raw, and it ended up being Kevin Owens. Didn't really sound like Kevin Owens in character was all that thrilled about it, so they could have gone back to that and turned him heel. But I think that would be silly at this point if the idea is, hopefully, eventually, to turn Randy Orton heel. You mentioned how, they both helped Cody, but Owens is the one getting the shot of the next pay-per-view because Orton's on Raw for the time being. feuding with Gunther, going into Bash in Berlin. You could use this, not to turn Owens heel, I think, but to turn Orton heel, as one of the reasons anyway, as the catalyst, because he's upset that for all the times that he's helped Cody this year, that he gave Owens the first shot. Now, again, granted, it was because Orton's not around right now, but you can make that argument that it should be Orton, that Orton can make the argument it should have been him, and that's why he might go heel at some point down the road. So again, I feel like this might be setting up for something even bigger come the fall, which could be really exciting.
Yeah, no, I think, like you said, I think Owens made sense here, but you couldn't intertwine it with Randy being upset that, like I said, Owens got the first shot. Even though Randy is getting his shot, I don't know, you can twine it somewhere and get it where it needs to be. I think it's kind of, that feud's kind of already made anyways. It's kind of like the writing's on the wall, but like I said, you can kind of make it make more sense when you get closer to it.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a great feud for the fall to kind of carry SmackDown. We have Roman back as a babyface, and Jacob Fatu wasn't involved in that segment on SmackDown, giving me hope that we might get Roman and Solo first, and they'll save Jacob Fatu for a little bit later down the road for Roman Reigns, as they should, because that's the much bigger attraction of the two matches compared to Roman and Solo. But you need another, compelling championship feud as well, and I think Orton and Owens and Orton and Rhodes. That's another thing too, because you could set up Orton turning heel on Owens, so to speak, and then you can bring back Owens to feud the Orton post-Cody Rhodes feud. So there's a lot of different directions they can go in between now and WrestleMania, and I would not be surprised to see a lot of these storylines culminate at WrestleMania, like Damian Priest and Finn Balor. They might be saving that first or second blow-off match, or whatever it is, for Mania itself, and not blow it off before then, like Punk and Rollins is another one. We might be getting a good look at what the WrestleMania card is going to look like now, because it seems like they use the tentpole pay-per-views to kind of set up the next tentpole pay-per-view, that being WrestleMania. So we'll see. But from Raw on Monday night, speaking of Bash and Berlin matches, they did announce another one on Monday night, that being Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley versus Dominik Mysterio and Liv Morgan in a mixed tag team match at Bash in Berlin. I feel like this is the best possible match to do right now. Finn Balor is not involved. But they're not doing Finn and Liv versus Damian and Rhea, which makes sense because, it's a Liv and Dom are the ones that just joined forces. But your thoughts on the mixed tag team match being made official for the pay-per-view and what we've seen from the storyline so far since the split from the Judgment Day, because I feel like all of what we've got on Raw in the last couple of weeks has been really, really good.
Yeah, I think they've done well. I think breaking Priest and Rhea off on their own makes sense. The other group members, besides Finn and I guess Dominik, the other group members kind of just were there. But now they're clearly aligned with Liv and Dom. But no, I think they've done well. I think Rhea and Dom and Damian as a beast pairing is great, and I think what they've done on Raw has been good. And I think best case scenario, doing this at Bash in Berlin. It's not like it's another title match. It's not like it's Dom and Damian 1-on-1. I think it's a nice, good mixed tag match.
Yeah, I think it keeps the feud alive, too, so they can always save Damian and Finn their first match for another time. They can save Liv and Rhea the rematch for another time as well. And a lot like Joe Hendry, you say his name and he appears. I feel like when you say Dirty Dom, you get the cops involved. That's why I heard the sirens on your end, because I said Dirty Dom. Is that why?
Yeah, seriously. Mass State Police heard Dirty Dom, and they're about to come arrest me.
That's what happens. No, but I like the match. I think the match makes sense. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the storyline beyond that, because the last couple of weeks, Damian and Rhea have been really over as baby faces. So I think there's that ceiling there for them to succeed even greater, that much farther down the road. Now, this match was not made official for the pay-per-view, but they did heavily tease it on Monday night. And I think there's a lot of different directions they can go in with this as well for the next couple of months as far as what kind of matches they can do. That being CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. On Monday night, the two interacting again, Punk trying to get the better of McIntyre with a belt and slapping him and doing whatever the fuck he was doing. But CM Punk and McIntyre could be headed for a strap match of some sort at the show. So, your thoughts on a potential strap match between the two come, I almost said Bad Blood, but that's the next pay-per-view. Bash in Berlin, it seems like the perfect kind of stipulation given the whole bracelet stuff and whatnot. I feel like that's a good stipulation for the two of the pay-per-view.
Yeah, I think this is another good stipulation match to lead into, like you said, Bad Blood. So do this, Punk can get a win, and then it can lead into the blow-off of Hell in a Cell at Bad Blood.
Do you think they could go as far with this strap match? Probably not. But as far with this strap match as what we got from Punk and MJF a couple of years ago at Revolution, because Punk has had a couple strap matches, some in WWE, that one in AEW. He was supposed to have a second one with Ricky Starks about a year ago, actually. Then he got fired, so it never happened. But that's what kind of this reminds me of. I feel like they can make this personal and really make the most out of this feud by going as far with it as they did with Punk and MJF, but I'm not quite sure if they're going to reach that level.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you someone, like, you could get color. I mean, I think it's necessary for their feud specifically, but like I said, as far as him and MJF went, I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, that feud is really intense, and this feud's been intense too, but I'm just hoping, and I like the SummerSlam match. I think they went this the storytelling route for a reason, but I feel like you can make the most of this upcoming match by, really having them go all out and making it intense, as opposed to just... the storytelling stuff is great, but you got to make it feel blood heavy and like a blood feud by having them go in there, beat the shit out of each other. It doesn't have to be quite as extreme as the Punk MJF match, which Punk, it was just, his face was like crimson mask, as Jim Ross would say, and that match at Revolution in 2022. But I think it's a fitting stipulation, though, for a feud that's been kind of boiling over in the last couple of weeks, and I feel like that's a great progression of the program. We mentioned Bronson Reed last week in his attack on Seth Rollins, and people were speculating that might be another match for Bash in Berlin. That might be a likely addition to the card. But that's actually not going to happen because it looks like Rollins might be out again, if only temporarily. So before we get to the Bronson Reed thing, because I do want to talk about him again, the rumor is now per Fightful or Meltzer or PW Insider, I forgot who had reported it, but Rollins might be out again, not extensively, but he might be taking more time off. I guess he's a bit banged up is the word going around right now, even though he's only had one match since being back. He got injured. I mean, he had surgery coming out of WrestleMania, had one match at Money in the Bank. I don't think he got re-injured. I think he's just still hurt and never fully recovered, and they brought him back early because they needed him for that show to face Damian Priest and to be involved in the Punk and McIntyre stuff. So when you hear that Rollins is going to be taking time off for at least a little bit longer, what are you thinking when you hear that? Do you think it's long-term, or do you think it's only temporarily?
I bet you it's just a little temporary. I mean, like I said, he did come back pretty quick from an injury. It seemed like he'd be out a little bit longer. So like I said, maybe it was just more like he could do what he had to do and then get involved in the Punk and McIntyre stuff to kind of just flush that along a little bit further. And then they kind of just use Reed here to put him on the shelf again and then continue once he gets back. I don't think it'll be long-term. I bet you'll be maybe a little bit of time. But, I mean, like I said, for what injury he had, I was surprised he came back so soon.
Yeah, I mean, that match ended up being really good, I think, with Damian Priest. And, I don't think the Punk-McIntyre match needed him. That they didn't need that special guest rep. They could have just existed on their own. But it did set up Punk and Rollins for the future. And I thought that might be a fall feud, but it looks like we talked about last week, that might be the Mania match, is Punk and Rollins, which is probably why they did what they did. But with Bad Blood, I mean, I feel like that would make sense. Bash in Berlin, probably not, because he would have to come back in the next 2 weeks. That would be kind of soon. But they can have him come back in like a month and then set that match up for Bad Blood in early October. I feel like that would make sense. And in the meantime, just have Bronson Reed continue to kill guys. I mean, he completely destroyed The Miz on Monday night, as well as R-Truth, with another 6 or 7 tsunami splashes. And I was skeptical coming out of last week whether they'd be able to maintain the momentum for Bronson Reed following that a great attack on Rollins, but at least on week 1, or week 2 rather, they were able to do that in that angle they did on Monday with Reed, Miz, and Truth. So have your thoughts changed at all on the Bronson Reed renewed push, or are you optimistic that he will remain a hopefully, heavily booked guy on Raw going forward, at least until Rollins comes back and they can rekindle that rivalry?
No, like I said, I think it's more the fact that when he faces Rollins, I just don't want him just lose 1, 2, 3 and we move on and we don't see him again. So I think in the interim, like you said, I think he'll continue to squash people or just crush them. But I'm fearful that when Rollins comes back, Rollins just beat him and then we move on to something else. And he's just kind of like a transitional guy for Rollins to beat, and then he just goes nowhere.
That's the real test. I mean, if they have their first match, Rollins wins on, let's say Raw, for example. At this point, I mean, that attack was aggressive enough to where I don't think they just do this on Raw as a one-off and that's it. They've done that before with Reed, and it was really disappointing with other people. At this point, the match has got to be safe for a pay-per-view like Bad Blood, or maybe even Survivor Series or Crown Jewel if Rollins isn't back in time for Bad Blood. But that is the real test, though, as to whether they can keep Reed relevant beyond, that one first match with Seth Rollins. I will say this, though, depending on how long Rollins is out, I think Reed and R-Truth is a logical match to do. They had him beat Miz on Monday. Beating R-Truth is probably the next step. If you need someone to work with Strowman in the meantime, as opposed to just having him out there squashing guys, which is totally fine, I think a good person for him to work with who is not busy right now is Braun Strowman. I mean, he was doing the Judgment Day thing for a while, for a few months. Never really had a payoff. I mean, he lost to Damian Priest about 3 weeks ago, and that was it. But Braun Strowman isn't busy right now. I think you could do a Braun Strowman-Bronson Reed feud and ultimately have Bronson Reed go over to kind of give him more heat before that eventual Seth Rollins match.
Yeah, I think after he beats R-Truth, like you said, maybe put him in a mini feud with Strowman, the two big guys, and Bronson goes over to kind of solidify himself as the big guy on Raw. And then, like you said, that can kind of culminate. And then we get Rollins come back, and there we go.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of did something similar with Braun Strowman and Big Show back in the day. We were just shitting on Big Show earlier, but they actually had a couple good matches back in 2017, and none of those matches I don't think were ever on pay-per-view, but they did allow Strowman to build momentum for future matches with Roman Reigns and other people like that. So you could do something similar here and, use Braun Strowman in the same role that you had Big Show in 7 years ago and get over Bronson Reed, hopefully, because I feel like he has a very bright future if utilized correctly. Also teased on Monday night, they set up a 6-man tag team match for next week's Raw with the New Day and Odyssey Jones taking on the Final Testament. Odyssey Jones in action on Raw for the first time on Monday night this past week, beating a guy named Vincent Winey, which is, what a fucking name. I know he's a developmental guy. I don't think his name is actually Vincent Winey. I think they just gave him that name. Such a stupid name. But anyway, so Odyssey Jones went over in the match, and like I said, they set up the 6-man tag team match. They're telling the story as of last week, and we kind of talked about it a little bit, with Odyssey Jones being buddy-buddy with Kofi. Kofi had mentioned that he was, training with Odyssey while he was out injured at the PC, so they kind of go back a little bit. Xavier Woods has no association with Odyssey at all. They're planting those seeds of dissension with Odyssey Jones and Xavier Woods not being happy that he's teaming with Kofi and maybe potentially joining the New Day, replacing either him or Big E or whatever in the group. Do you think this could actually lead to a New Day split, or are they just teasing us? It's been a decade, so I'm very skeptical. I don't think it is, but there is also a small part of me that thinks, what if they actually went through with it?
I think it's a tease. I mean, I don't think if Woods turn, I don't even think I'd really give a shit. I mean, at this point, if I'm going to be honest, I think it's just a tease. I really don't want to see them split. I honestly, like I said, I don't think if they did, I would really care. But I mean, I think it's a decent tease, but I mean, I don't think I'd care if Woods turned on Kofi.
You don't think there's any value in a New Day split in 2024?
Not particularly.
Would your thoughts be different if they reversed the roles and Kofi was the singles heel and Xavier Woods was the babyface, or does it not matter?
No, I mean, at this point for both guys, I don't need to see like a singles run.
Do you think they could maybe not split them up like hard way with having Woods? I don't think it's happening, so it's not even really. I mean, it's worth discussing as they're teasing it. I just don't think it's going to happen. But what if Woods were to go off on his own, kind of get pissed with the fact that Kofi's teaming with Jones, and you can have Jones kind of benefit from being paired with Kofi for a little while. Don't turn them heel, but what if Woods branches off and kind of does his own thing? Maybe he requests to go to SmackDown or whatever the fuck. Is there any value in doing that? Maybe not having them feud or turning one of them heel. But I think Woods kind of proved himself with that King of the Ring win a couple years ago, at least in my opinion, because I think Xavier Woods is really good. Again, have them do their own thing without actually splitting up. Any value there, or again, just keep them as a tag team, in your opinion?
I mean, you could split them up. I just don't know how much, like you said, it depends on what they do with Woods on his own. With the SmackDown, I feel like SmackDown's pretty tough right now, unless you're like a top guy that kind of get over. And they have Roman, they have a ton of big baby faces anyways. Like I said, I think you can do it and not do like a full split, and then eventually obviously rekindle at some point. I mean, as a tag team, like I said, they haven't really done much in forever, so I feel like at this point, like maybe a break away from each other would help, but I mean, not like I said, it's been so long at this point, I've kind of just, when I hear the music, I kind of just groan, honestly.
Well, I mean, I like the New Day. I think they're still over, but it's not like, oh man, the New Day is coming out. Like, it's a pretty, like, I don't know if content is the right word. Not you specifically, but just in general. The feeling towards the New Day is like, okay, yeah, I like these guys, but I know they're not going to be involved in anything massive because they haven't been for such a long time. I would like to see them do their own thing, not necessarily split, but like go their separate ways for a little while. Kind of like what Big E did, but he didn't like formally say, hey, I'm going to move away from you guys. He just got drafted to a different brand, and that's how that kind of worked out. With Woods, though, SmackDown isn't automatically the answer, like you said. I mean, there's still people who got drafted to SmackDown, and even Raw, actually, who we have not seen yet on their respective shows. I mean, Shinsuke Nakamura got drafted to SmackDown. We haven't seen the guy since. He's not been on a single SmackDown show since he got drafted. We have not seen him since April when he was on Raw. So, I mean, going to SmackDown isn't automatically the answer. Although I will say this on a quick side note. Giovanni Vinci popped up in a vignette on Friday. I was kind of shocked to see that. I thought they would just let his contract run out and they would fire the guy, but it looks like they're actually going to give this guy a shot, take his face off the milk carton, and see what he can do on SmackDown. Maybe not as a main event guy, obviously, but if Vinci can be utilized at a mid-card level, I feel like that could work.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think he'd just be canned. I mean, we haven't seen him in a while, but no, I think the vignette was good on SmackDown. Like I said, I think in-ring wise, he has all the tools. Like I said, the character's always been for him specifically what's held him back. If it's done right, I think he could be like I said, mid-card, so maybe even upper mid-card, just depending on how they book him. But I mean, I think he's too good of a wrestler, like in-ring wise, to just give up on him.
I mean, I agree with that, but they've had him under contract for so long, dating back to like the Cruiserweight Classic, that I was skeptical they were ever going to actually use the guy again. I mean, honestly, at this point, it's like AEW where when you don't see someone on TV long enough, it's a telltale sign that they're probably going to get released, that their contract's up soon. I don't know if I would say that about Shinsuke Nakamura, but the fact the guy hasn't been on TV at all in months is weird. It's not disappointing because, I mean, I like heel Shinsuke and what they were doing before he disappeared from the show. But he was constantly losing, and it's hard to care at this point. With Vinci, though, they never really actually tried with the guy on his own. They did a little bit in NXT about 2 years ago, but then that was cut short when he reunited with Imperium on the main roster, which was the right call. But I feel like he does deserve a single shot on the main brands, and we'll see how far they go with it. If he just ends up getting released anyway, at least they could say they tried a little bit. It's better than just having Imperium split up from him and beat him up, and then we never see him again. So I thought that was an encouraging sign. Last two things for you, Mr. Marceau. We saw Ivy Nile on Monday night officially join American Made and the Creed Brothers. Obviously, she's been with the Creed Brothers for a while, but she officially turned heel on Monday, turning on Maxine Dupree. I feel like this was the right call, and adding even more.
Why are you laughing?
Why I'm laughing?
Yeah.
What do you mean? I was laughing at the fact that.
You had a little giggle tickle in your throat. What's so funny?
What, a Maxine just being not great? I mean, the team with Maxine Dupree?
Oh, no, you said she beat up Maxine Dupree and you had a little giggle in your throat. So I just
well, I mean,
what's so funny?
What I'm saying is that I don't know if that's going to... She's gotten over as a sympathetic character. It has Maxine Dupree, which is nice, but I feel like Ivy Nile probably, I'm saying in storyline, saw the writing on the wall there, and she's like, hey, I'm going to dump this dead weight and join the team that might actually have a higher ceiling on Rob. Well, what do you think?
No, I completely agree. I just love the tickle in your throat. It got me good. But, I mean, like you said, Ivy Nile was the A-plus student with the person in your group project that doesn't want to do anything. So she just was like, you know what? It's time to cut the dead weight and just move on. It's like you said, Maxine's like, she's kind of like, I wouldn't say pathetic, but she's just like, I don't know, she's like frail, and she comes off like very like nice and like soft, I guess the rest of it. Like, she just comes off very sympathetic. So it's like, yeah, I get Ivy heat, but like, the whole Maxine Dupree thing, I mean, hey, she might save orphans on the weekends. I don't know what she does. She might be a great person, but as a wrestler, I think it's time to just to move on.
Yeah, so I will say this, though. I will play devil's advocate. They have gotten her over in this role as a sympathetic character. I don't think there's a bright future for Maxine Dupree in the ring, But I think using her for angles like this, where someone like an Ivy Nile turns on her, they will probably do a 6-woman tag team match. I thought Maxine Dupree was hurt, but maybe not. I don't know. But they do the 6-person tag team match, or she beats her in a one-on-one match, and then you move on. I don't think she needs to be in the ring full time. I mean, the fact that we've seen more of her in the ring than, and these people aren't great in the ring either, but it's worth mentioning. But then people like Valhalla, I mean, she's a good worker, but we haven't really seen her in the ring a whole lot. B-Fab, Scarlett, Elektra Lopez. I'm not even sure. Elektra had a match, actually. I think she faced Alina before Mania, but beyond that, she rarely wrestles. The fact that we've seen Maxine wrestle more than they have, and some of those women are better than her, is kind of shocking, because Maxine has improved, but, I mean, what does that really say when you're as bad as dirt to begin with, and then you're just marginally better? You know what I mean?
She's wrestled more matches than Fire and Dawn have. They've been champions for 2 months.
Don't
and
even
Fire's
mention
great in the ring.
I didn't put this down because I honestly completely forgot about it. How bad is the Pure Fusion Collective name? That is fucking terrible. I know that's not their name. That's the new name for Sonya's group. But that name is awful. Where are they getting these names from?
I blew snot when she said it, like, dead-ass serious when they introduced them on Raw. I literally, choked on my water. I said, what? What kind of name is that?
What is that? What does that even mean? What does that even mean? I don't know. And I heard, did you see the rumor about the new Judgment Day name and that they might call them Street Trash? The fuck is that?
I like that.
Stupid. I mean, I understand why.
Street Trash.
That is the absolute dumbest thing I've ever heard. I hope that's not what they're seriously considering as the new Judgment Day name, which also means if they get rid of it, they would have to get rid of the theme song, and I like the music, so that would be a bummer, but if they're going to rebrand, that's fine, but as Street Trash, that would be awful. So, God, I hope not. Last thing for you, Mr. Marceau. 2 out of 3 falls match on the main event of Raw on Monday night. Intercontinental Championship. Bron Breakker beating Sami Zayn. A lot more time they were given to that match than the match at SummerSlam, which only went 5 minutes. Right result here. Bron Breakker obviously going over. Correct result. But I thought it was a really good match. I don't know where they go with Bron Breakker from here as Intercontinental Champion, but I think they've got something with him in this role, and I feel like he could have a really fun run if these matches with Sami were any indication. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, that was a fun match. Got a lot more time than SummerSlam. Braun winning was the right move. You kind of hinted at it there. I like Braun. There isn't a ton of baby faces on Raw, I feel like, that would contend for him. So I'm interested to see what they do with him next. I mean, Gable was kind of in that spot for a while, then he turned heel. Bronson's a heel. I mean, I guess, like I said, Braun Strowman, someone you mentioned earlier. But it's Pete Dunne's a heel. He's feuding with Sheamus, who's a babyface. I mean, I guess you could do him and Jay, but, I mean, I don't really want to see that. Jay's going to lose again. I mean, who else is even a babyface you even have face? And that's kind of the one, I guess, negative. I just don't think they have too many babyfaces on Raw for him to face right now.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think. Jay is, I hate the answer of Jay just because, and I know you just said the same thing. I love Jay, but he's not going to win. It's his up-teens title opportunity, and he's going to fucking lose whenever it matters most again. I mean, I don't know, though. With Sami, you think the Bloodline thing would be cool. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, but they're probably going to go for the tag team titles, right? Jey Uso's been saying that constantly, so the Judgment Day have done jack shit with those belts, so maybe giving them to the Sami and Jey Uso might not be the worst idea.
Yeah, no, they teased it. They teased it last week before he even faced Braun. He's after you beat Braun, me and you can go for the tag belts, and you can be double champ. Obviously, Sami didn't win, but no, I think put the belts. Like I said, the Judgment Day did nothing with them. I don't know. Like I said, it's just they split the belts up, make 2 separate belts, and they do nothing with them. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. But that's where we are at this point. So yeah, I mean, I think you do Jay and Sami versus Judgment Day. I feel like Damian gets involved somehow, costs them the belts, and we just keep that feud going. And then you put the belts on Jay and Sami. Maybe somehow intertwine them back into Roman and all them when time it needs to become. I mean, I don't know. I think for Jay, unfortunately, the singles aspirations this year don't seem like they're going to happen. So might as well put the belts on him and Sami and see what they can do with it.
Keep him busy with that in the meantime. I think the Roman Reigns thing might be inevitable, but I wouldn't have them people were pissed. Oh, man, where was Jimmy at SummerSlam? Where was Paul Heyman on SmackDown? Dude, they're not going to bring them back on day one. Do people understand how stories are told? I'm not saying you got to wait 6 months, but to have Jimmy or Jay come out to help. I mean, Jimmy saving Roman would make sense because Roman never really turned on Jimmy. I mean, I guess last year he did, but the last time we saw them together, they were on the same page at Mania. Jey Uso, why the fuck would he run out there and save Roman Reigns after everything that Roman Reigns did to him? Same thing with Sami Zayn. That makes no sense. They got to save that for later down the road, I think.
No, definitely. You can't blow it up day one. It's called a story, people. What the fuck?
Listen, they got to drag this bloodline stuff out for a while, probably until at least WrestleMania, if not longer. So we're gonna get a whole lot more.
Third inning.
That's what Paul Heyman said. I would go so far as to say it's maybe the fourth or fifth, but it's certainly not the bottom of the ninth. It was the bottom of the ninth of the title run, but the bloodline story itself, I don't think we're even remotely close to the ending, honestly, anytime soon. With Bron Breakker, though, I mean, there's a whole host of challengers you mentioned. Maybe Braun Strowman, we mentioned him earlier. Sheamus at some point would be cool. I think Sheamus beating him for the belt would be awesome because he's never held that IC title before, and that's his whole goal or whatever. Dragunov would be good, but I feel like we've seen a lot of Breakker and Dragunov so far this year on Raw, and Breakker's won pretty much every match, so there's no real reason to do that right now. Yeah, I don't really know what they do with Bron Breakker in the meantime, but I am glad
I guess you could feed him to like Kofi and Xavier if you really needed to.
Yeah, maybe as an interim feud. I don't know if you do those matches on pay-per-view, you know?
No, yeah, I'm just saying like just a kind of transition
quick match. You know, and Miz, maybe the same thing. I mean, like what Bronson Reed is doing with Miz right now, maybe he can face Miz and be Miz or R-Truth or something. And again, not as a full-fledged feud, but as like a one-off match on Raw, I feel like that can make sense in the meantime.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, at least they're keeping the title still relevant, though. I'm happy with that because Gunther brought so much prestige and importance to it. I mean, it main evented Raw on Monday, so it's nice to see that the belt is at a certain level, that they're keeping it there, and it's not diminished just because Gunther's no longer champion. We'll talk more next week, Mr. Marceau. New episodes every single Thursday on WrestleRant.com, WrestleRantRadio.com, and all your usual podcast platforms. Rate the show, review the show, subscribe to the show. Never miss a new episode every single Thursday. Have an awesome one, brother. I'll catch your ass next Thursday.
I'll talk to you, man.
All right, adios.
Join Graham, GSM Matthews, and RJ Marceau every Thursday as they run down their weekly wrestling rants, offer expert analysis, host exclusive interviews, and more. Subscribe today on all your favorite podcast platforms and never miss an episode of WrestleRant Radio.